You mentioned that a judge prefers someone who has work experience before. So in work experience, what are they actually looking for? If a person, say you, for example, started your clerkship immediately after your LLB, right? So if a person is like the exam has the 5 main subjects are being covered: constitutional law, then your CPC, CRPC, evidence, and all these things. So if a person is preparing for all these subjects, are they sufficient? No. So what exactly do they see in
what
a
will
person?
happen is you will clear the exam. You will go for the interview, you will clear the interview. Then you'll be in the pool. And then eventually when there is a vacancy, you will get a call, okay, fine, that this judge has requested a clerk and you're the next rank holder, go, join. And you'll start there. But I'm just letting you know, so I started straight away. But I had already worked those 5 years of my law school. So I was already looking to do things which were expected of me. And so that's the main difference. Because see, during my time also, a lot of people who were applying for clerkship, the exam just started from that year in 2015 and 15-16 or so. So a lot of those individuals were preparing for judiciary, your exams for district judiciary. And most of those individuals were equipped to clear exams. So some of them very easily cleared the clerkship exam and then they continue to prepare for that exam. But those individuals may or may not be. Some of them were. A couple of them are judges now and they did a fabulous job for the judges they were working with. Their judges were relying on them quite a bit. But I'm just letting you know that there are judges who would prefer that you have worked before. He did it after 2 years of work ex. So he'd done a lot of filing work for 2 years and then he came to do his clerkship. So the judge also would be able to, receive more from you. You'll be able to add more value. It's basically because you have more knowledge, so that's the basic aspect. I would still say that you should consider it. If you clear it and you get it, very well. Go right away. But if you have an option, then you can consider that you get some experience. I'm telling you, one of the finest judges who's there in the court right now, without a doubt, he prefers people with work ex. So that's there. I can't take his name, but I'll just tell you, like, one of the phrases which was used was, the registry sends me all sorts of trash. So that mindset's already there, because see, if you don't have work ex, you may or may not be of value to me. And sometimes they might, but most of the time which they did send was something that he could not work with. So those people were just there. And they're allowed to take clerks on discretion. So that's what they would then prefer. But ultimately they have to get their work done. Next, anyone else?
Just to add to this, the difference here is about having technical competency and having some sort of practical exposure. When you go work for a judge, they really don't have the time to sit down and clear your basics, right? And basics are not just what's there in the section, but it's a lot about how pleadings are done, what are the important aspects of a file, right? So file reading is a skill in itself. And these are things that you will only pick up once you start working. So while he did it right after graduation, because he was in GLC and he had interned extensively, he had that sufficient work ex, right? I had 2 years of work ex and I was told explicitly that I was being chosen because of my experience for 2 years. So that then becomes an important factor. Any other question?
So is work ex also to be in some specific field of law, some specialization, anything like should a student like direct?
No, there's nothing like that. There are people who are working in a corporate law firm and then they shifted and they did a clerkship, then they studied there, then they went for a LLM. There's no clear structure in this profession as such.
Okay.
You could be doing anything at that point of time and still excel it. I think it's more about the work ethic that you develop while working at either a chamber or a firm. And then of course, with time, automatically, it's not that they expect you to know everything. It's not like that. It's just that you'd be able to take on those assignments in a more proper manner than you would otherwise be, because otherwise you'd be clueless.
Thank you.
Ask us anything that you want. You can ask anything which is basic, You don't have to think if it's good enough questions or anything. Specific to your scenario also.
Okay.
Yeah, go on. Ask 10 more. That's what we're here for.
Okay, so if the focus is on gaining work experience, say I am in my final year and I'll have 6 months in hand. The last semester is given just to intern. So should I intern? Should I do an judicial internship or under a lawyer to be able to be in a position that
See,
I'm
so now that's very valuable
ready?
for you. You could consider, because now you don't have attendance, I'm guessing last semester, they allow you to do
exactly.
it. You could consider working continuously with a judge. You could apply to one of those individuals you're interested in working with, or wherever you get in. You can apply to multiple places and then see. And once you show them that you're really, really diligent and you're interested and you're taking, you can then, when you're leaving, you can ask them that, I would like to join you as a law clerk after I get done. In between, after a month, after 2 months, anytime. That is a choice.
Interning under a judge would be better than interning.
I wouldn't say better or worse. It's a personal choice. If let's say you want a job in a firm, I would recommend that you consider doing that. That you could go and work at that firm, show them how good or valuable you can be, and then they would give you an offer. And then you'd work at that firm. But if it is something that makes you curious, that let's say you want to do litigation, for example, I would recommend clerkship in general also, but I would definitely recommend it for people who are considering litigation, because I think it's an added advantage. You're only giving 1 year out of your life, and it's something that you can't really do later on. It's probably just like first 4 or 5 years of your professional life after college. So it's a choice that you have to make. I think you can go there, work with them. If you're getting to work with them for 3-4 months, that I think has a lot of value. And then they can consider you if they can have you for later on as well. Definitely makes sense.
So can you tell us more about the clerkship exam and the interview? Like, what should we focus on?
So I didn't go through that process because I applied before the exam came. And then I pursued it and I got through. Exam as such has those subjects which you have to prepare. I think 5, still 5, right? Evidence, IPC, CRPC, CPC, and constitutional law. Once you clear, you get ranks, and then they'll call you like a shortlisted students according to their vacancies at the time. They'll call you for interview. Mostly 2 or 3 judges of the Supreme Court will take that interview, and then there could be any question. It could depend on your personal profile. They could ask you about the work that you've done. They could ask you about something that's happening in the country recently. One of the verdicts of the court earlier. They might ask you if, let's say, you came from Northeast or Kashmir or Rajasthan, anything. And if they wanted to ask you something about that, they might ask you about that, anything. But it's a smooth experience. It's very fairly done. Yeah.
When you mentioned that one should know the judge where you want to work with, under whom you want to work with, and you have to know the way they function. How can we know that? Like, how should we research? Should we read their judgments, or how should we?
No, reading their judgments will only tell you how well they write.
Right. So how can we know that? How the research should be conducted?
I think you'll have to get in touch with people who are clerking with them, who've clerked with them before, whether it's through your own network of people or someone that you know now. For example, the 2 of us. And eventually you could find out if it's conducive or if it's beneficial to clerk with a particular judge. And then you can take a call if it's worth applying to that person at all. Because, see, like I was pointing out, it's a choice. Let's say if there was an individual who had a choice between 2-3 judges because of the connections, that person could make that choice. Then there could be a person whether I should do this or I should straight away take a job at a firm. Then a lot of financial aspects will also come to play. That, okay, do I need this or not? Then there are choices, let's say, for example, I was talking about colleges. So automatically choices go lower when you've not come from a very, very reputed institutions, regardless of how your grades are. Firms, of course, would prefer that. In that scenario, I think something like this, regardless of which judge it is, would help. Because it's going to also give you an opportunity of interacting with different individuals over there. Like a lot of good friends that I have are some of the people who clerked with me and who were practicing at the time with different senior advocates or at the firm, and those individuals eventually helped me in making the choices which, at the bar when I wanted to join a chamber. So those kind of things will start happening. And you never know, a judge might also be generous enough and help you out with making these choices. There are all sorts of people. So, but yeah, it can happen through those mechanisms. You'll have to go to court, you'll have to see if the judge really has. There are judges who never had their clerks in court because they buried them with so much work. But for some people that's okay, for some people that's not okay. Like I wouldn't have been okay with not going to court. But there were people who were okay, and they're all doing well in profession, so it's necessary, but about what you really want.
Thank you.
So can you elaborate on what is the difference between doing clerkship in High Court and Supreme Court, and which is better option?
Yeah, so I'll try to detail it out for you. So no, there's nothing like better, according to me. I think because the work that's happening at High Court, again, so when you're applying at High Court, you have to be a little aware of how they function. Because, and also, what is the kind of roster that they mostly have? Because there are some judges in High Court who, because of their experience as either senior advocates or members of the bar, have had an experience in certain areas of law, so the Chief Justice would give them those kind of assignments more, and that automatically makes your learning better. For example, if a couple of my friends clerked with a person who was dealing with original side, arbitration, IPR, so they're learning from that perspective. And by the way, if you're looking to learn the work at that level, where drafting happens, High Court is a much better option, because that's, in a way, the work from where the matter is coming up. That's where it's created. Whatever has been done correctly or has been missed out determines the fate of the case eventually. The kind of drafting that happens at Supreme Court is very different. It's very from the perspective of questions of law, substantial question, general importance, constitutional importance, public policy, all of those factors come in. So that's very different from what happens at the High Court. So if you're really wanting to learn, then working with one of the original side judges at the Delhi High Court, or senior judges who's listening to a lot of different miscellaneous writs or something, is extremely beneficial. Because the kind of experience that they have had, because most of these individuals would have spent a lot of time at the bar, at that very court, the same court, mostly. So automatically, I think it's a very enriching experience. And Supreme Court's more about laying down law, so again, drafting-wise, I think that was a better place to be, but learning-wise, both the places are extremely good. You can add.
See, just to add to this, again, the difference here is about the original side and the appellate side practices, right? So in Supreme Court, whatever work you're doing, the record is in front of you. Someone else has worked on it, arguments have been made, and a judgment has been delivered, right? In High Court, whatever you do, you are creating the record. You pick which are the arguments to choose, right? And if you clerk with a High Court judge, you will see many more options like that. You will see much more variety in the arguments that are taken. Because at the Supreme Court level, for most issues, the arguments are only on points of law, where there's not much scope for creativity. But at the High Court level, it's about application of those legal points to the facts of the specific case, right? So if you want to learn these things, then that way High Court would probably be a better option also. But see, the other thing that you have to understand, this is in relation to your question as well as yours, is that there's no fixed template, there's no one-size-fits-all formula. Your choices will depend on your background, your circumstances, and what you want to do in life. There are people that you might be brilliant and not interested in litigation at all. You might want to just work in a corporate firm, in which it might not make that much sense to go for a clerkship. I would still recommend it because it's a great experience. If you want to learn, it makes you a better lawyer eventually. But depending on what you want, that is important, right? So for example, you asked what are the options, or like which areas one should work for if you want to go. See, eventually you have to factor in your interests as well. You can't just be dictated by where will I get a job, what will. So you might get a job in like an IPR firm, but you might hate IPR. Does that mean you'll spend the rest of your life doing IPR? So that's the question, right? So these are things that you have to figure it out and factor everything in and speak to as many people as possible. Like your point about how do you research, figure out, browse through LinkedIn, like scour through LinkedIn, figure out who is interned where, who has spoken to, just pester them. If you find out one contact, ask them if they can put you in touch with someone who's worked at a particular office. Then speak to them. These are things that you absolutely need to do.
So only one small aspect that I don't really agree with. I don't think there's no creativity or lack of creativity at Supreme Court. The only difference is at High Court you would see lawyers give you different kind of facts, different scenarios, interpret them differently, present to your judge differently, and then you would see him decide how he is dealing with the matter or how he's deciding it. So you see an entire stage of how an original side trial happens, or if you're on the criminal side, then you'll see that aspect. At Supreme Court, on the other hand, I think how each and every high court in this country and every district court will function is decided. Because they're telling you whether this law, which was decided in this year, is still good law. So there, I think, is a lot of creativity with regard to how your law has to evolve. So, yeah.
When a person starts practicing, there are multiple different types of cases or different types of experiences that happen. So a person learns eventually. So is it advisable to enter the practice or working field immediately and not pursue masters? Masters somewhere, I'm not sure, but I'm getting this indirect hints that somehow it goes in a lot in theory and academic side. Because if it's endless learning, that a person can enter the working field and learn eventually as per the requirement of the field.
See, so this is again completely based on my interactions with folks who have done masters, both right after graduation and after getting some work experience. In most cases, the ones who went right after graduation said that they would have probably gotten more out of the experience had they had some work ex. Because if you go for an international masters, your class would essentially consist of experienced people. There you would be one of the few people who have just there right after graduation, right? So, and again, this is based on only on interactions. I have not done a master's and I am not planning to do one. So I don't know, but.
So yeah, there's the point that he mentioned, it's also vice versa. People who go straight away, they say, oh, I think would have learned more if you would have gone after WorkX. The ones who go after WorkX would sometimes tell you that, oh, you're completely out of touch and now again you put yourself into it and then you take a break from the profession. It becomes very difficult, especially if you're in litigation. You will hear this a lot. They'll say that you should just get it out of your way. Why will you take a break eventually and then go back and then come? But I don't think it makes a difference. I think you can do it however you want. Okay, first of all, I haven't done it. So my conversation is based on a lot of my friends who've done it.
I was expecting that I wanted.
So one factor that I think should matter is that are you taking your best shot? If you apply if you apply while you're in college, when you're in your final year and you apply and you get through one of the best universities in the world, whether it's in UK or US, then very well you can go and pursue it according to me, because it gives you that impetus that you can continuously finish your studying and then get back to working. But if you think that this is not the best college I can do, and it will be if it's not one of those top 5 or 10 institutions, then I think it makes a lot of sense, because you'd be spending the same amount of money. And it's a huge investment. So then it might be better that you take some time, and after those 2, 3 or 4 years of WorkX, when you take your shot, you automatically will see that, because there are institutions which have a minimum WorkX requirement, 2 years, 3 years. So it automatically makes you look more desirable to them. So I would recommend that you see what is best for you from that perspective. that are you taking your best shot? Is this how you can best spend that money, whether it's scholarship, whether it's family money, whatever it is. If you think that it's being best spent, if you're already getting Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge, Columbia, whatever it is, very well. If you're not, then maybe wait for those 2-3 years, then attempt 3-4 years, whatever it is. And at that point in time, whatever you're getting is the best you can do. Because I don't think you can go beyond wasting a lot of more. I mean, you cannot go beyond waiting. But yeah, there are people who've done it after 4 years, there are people who've done it after 6 years. And
I wanted to know how advisable it is to even do it, not like immediately after or 2-3 years after.
I think I would advise it, that you should do it. Again, it's the same thing because you're getting to be part of a different group altogether. And I think the change that comes is more in your approach and how your thinking can be broadened. I wouldn't say that it offers the same advantage that it used to 30 years back, because there was a time when only a number or handful of students were going from India to pursue these studies. And that, of course, put them in a different league altogether. Now there are hundreds of students going every year. There are like 20% of some institutions is Indians. So it may not be the same level, but personally I look at it in this manner, that if eventually the Indian economy was to be opened to foreign law firms, then I think people who have spent some time over there or are working there or have come back after studying there would be in a more advantageous position than the rest of us. So I would definitely recommend it.
Thank you.
Also, I must say that when you're looking at jobs at the firms, it does not reflect much in your pay. You might go, you might study at Harvard, you might come back, and if you want to practice, that chamber is not suddenly going to start paying you more just because, oh, you came from Harvard.
Right. Some seniors did mention, and I got to know. That is why I posed the question.
Yes, so that is not related.
Yes, it
will stay where it was.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending learning process. So that is why I pose this question, that if you have to learn, and then when you're working, you learn eventually side by side. So why not learn and experience new things as per the requirement of the job, whatever is coming your way. So that is why I wanted to know how beneficial it is to pursue masters in a particular field and specialization, and instead working and then learning side by side.
No, see, the latter is going to continue all your life.
Right.
But that 1 year, what you will do over there is different.
Okay.
That is not something that I think you will have an opportunity of doing it over here just because you're here and you're working. Okay. And I think it's a great thing that it's a never-ending learning process, because it's basically people are paying you to read. That's what this profession is. I mean, in litigation at least.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great thing, regardless of the recent events of how disappointing they have been from the perspective of profession. That's one of the advantages, that all the investment is done. Now what you have to focus is on, I mean, of course, bringing in work itself is a huge challenge sometimes. But yeah, I would definitely recommend a master's if you have the time, funds, whatever it is, and if you can take your best shot. If you get a good college, you should definitely go. Yeah.
Thank you.